Hello and welcome to my in-depth look and breakdown at all of the changes in the brand new Warhammer 40,000 9th edition Death Guard Codex. It's right here on the right. If you've watched my first look video, you will have discovered that it contains less pages than the 8th edition book and has pretty much less content in terms of the lore, paint guides, pictures, things like that. And even pictures of the units. This is a new norm that Games Workshop are venturing into by not giving you the full package, in my opinion, compared to previous offerings. And in the same step, charging you more. Overall, it's a good look in terms of the buffs that a lot of the units have received. This video is going to be different to the Space Marine and Necron Codex videos that I've done. This is more in depth and I specifically look at the data sheets and the numbers. So yeah, without further ado, let's crack on because I've got a wad of notes here and I want to get to it. So let's just move the old Codex out of the way. In fact, what we'll do is we'll put the new Codex at the bottom and the old Codex at the top. So the old Codex right here starts off with the Demon Prince of Nurgle, and it just so happens, and that's on page 70, it just so happens that the new Codex also starts off with the Death Guard Demon Prince, they call it this time. The big change really to most units is their movement speed, their toughness, their wounds and their attacks. They've all had slight buffs. Things are now a bit cheaper as well. Disgustingly Resilient works differently. It's not like a feel no pain anymore. Before, each time a model with this ability loses a wound, you roll a dice. On a 5+, that model does not lose that wound. You don't get that anymore. Disgustingly Resilient now, each time an attack is allocated to a model in this unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. So that's still fantastic because it's reducing the damage of weapons, and when you couple that with Death Guard's usual toughness of 5, yeah, it's quite a big buff. It means that those high strength weapons have less of a chance to go through. I think that's better than 5+ ignoring the wound, because 5+ ignoring the wound, you've got a 2 in 6 chance of getting that, whereas you're always reducing the damage by 1 with the new rule. You've also got this Contagions of Nurgle called Nurgle's Gift, whereby every battle round number that continues, you're subtracting 1 from the toughness characteristic of models in that enemy unit. So with round 1, the Contagion range is only 1 inch, but by the time you're at battle round number 4 or more, Contagion range is 9 inches. So that's a great 18-inch bubble there that you've got going that is reducing the toughness of your enemy. So already, if the toughness 5 for the Death Guard wasn't already a nice bonus, all of the other units are going to be, well, Space Marine equivalent is going to be toughness 3. So now you've got toughness 3 for Space Marines and toughness 5 for Death Guard. It makes them very, very survivable. Almost to the point that Mortarion is unkillable. More on that guy later. So let's go back to the data sheets. We've got the Death Guard Demon Prince there, and he's there. Same power points cost, he's an 8. The main change there though is that he's now got 6 attacks instead of 4, and he can take a Plague Spewer. Yeah, crazy, right? The sword now gains a +1 to the strength and also a +1 to the AP. So he's now got a strength 8, AP -3, damage 3 sword. Fantastic. The talons unfortunately got worse, but the axe has better strength. Typhus, same power points cost there. He's a bit faster, he can shuffle a bit quicker. He's now a movement of 5 inches and he gets a whopping 6 attacks instead of 4. Truly amazing. The Man Reaper now has 2 different profiles. You've got the cleave and the scythe profiles, whereas before he's just had a straight up strength +3, AP -3 and a damage of 3. He still gets that, and he gets his plague weapon, but it's worse because you have to subtract 1, when he hits. However, the scythe ability, you're getting 2 hit rolls instead of 1, so he can scythe through his enemies with 12 attacks. Pretty decent now. The abilities have slightly changed. Master of Dead, you don't add anything to the toughness anymore, you just add 1 to the strength characteristic of the attack, and it's 6 inches now instead of 7. Why couldn't they have just kept it at 7 inches? It makes it so much more fun. So then we are on to the Chaos Lord, and the Chaos Lord in the old book is right there, same power points cost, but he's had a buff. He's now got a toughness 5, 5 wounds and 5 attacks, so he's much better than he was before. This is where we start to see the problem, ladies and gentlemen, with laziness. Nothing but laziness. Why can't you just grab a picture and put it there? This happened with the Imperial Armour Compendium book. That book is £40. It's not limited edition, it doesn't have a page keeper. It's just a collection of data sheets, no massive artwork pieces or anything like that, like these codexes usually have. And that missed out on pictures of the units. It's shocking, there's no excuse for it, and if they had called me up, I would have put all these pictures in for free. Crikey. In battle tomes, you've got pictures of like Spider Riders and things that have been around for well over 20 years. So I don't think it's an issue there in terms of how old a miniature is, whether or not for it to feature. And I think it's quite funky for the model to feature. I mean, look at that. They've got the Demon Prince, and he's been around for a very long time. He was originally around in metal. And breathe. That's my rant over in regards to these. I won't rant about the pictures anymore, I promise. Now, you've also got a Chaos Lord in Terminator armour, so everything's following the same pattern so far. Again, of course, the Chaos Lord in Terminator armour has had a buff in his toughness, so he's now got toughness 5 and attacks of 5. You've got a new unit, the Lord of Virulence. This chap right here, who I'm about to do a review of and some size comparisons. Looks pretty decent. He's brand new. He's got the same stat line as the Chaos Lord in Terminator armour, but he's got the twin plague spewer, which again is the same as a normal plague spewer in the profile, except it gets 2 shots. The plague claw, now I haven't been able to find this melee weapon anywhere. It's a decent weapon. It bumps his strength up to 8, AP -3 and a damage of 2. It's a plague weapon, and however you are going to have to subtract 1 from the hit roll. But at weapon skill 2+, it shouldn't be too much of a difference. He does have a new ability called Master of Destruction, which is probably one of the main reasons you'll pick him up. Every time a core unit within 6 inches of him makes a ranged attack with a plague weapon, the unmodified wound roll of 6, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. Very, very decent. Try not to overlook that new ability. Then we are on to the Lord of Contagion, of which you still cannot get an individual model for. Lord of Contagion, yeah, it's right there, he's earlier on in the book, but he's a bit cheaper now at power points cost of a 6, and he now comes with 5 attacks. They've removed Nurgle's Gift, unfortunately. Basically, Nurgle's Gift is within the Contagions of Nurgle. Anything with Contagions of Nurgle has essentially Nurgle's Gift. You've got a Death Guard Sorcerer in Terminator armour, but you no longer have a sorcerer on his own. Instead you have this malignant playcaster, I guess. He takes the place of the sorcerer. But the sorcerer in Terminator armour, he now gets toughness 5, 5 wounds and 4 attacks. And the playcaster, which I believe is on the next page, has become a little bit cheaper, has more attacks, better toughness, and still has the pestilential fallout rule. Plague Marines. This is an interesting one. And they're all pictured here in a really, really odd kind of product advertisement, I'd like to call that. Yeah, I'd much rather have them on the field of battle or some kind of setup. They are stock photos that have been around for quite a while now, 4 years, and they've just, you know, placed them. Now the big change for the Plague Marines is, of course, they've now got 2 wounds instead of 1, and that falls in line with the other Space Marines, and they've now got 2 attacks. Moving over to the cultists, you used to be able to get a big juicy blob of 40 of them. You can now only get 30, and they are a bit cheaper. So are the Poxwalkers. Their toughness though, however, has jumped from 3 to 4, which kind of negates the ability that Typhus would have given them. And of course you can still get them in a blob of 20. So it kind of makes the old Combat Patrol a little bit redundant, because that box set includes 30 of them, which you can't take in a big blob of 30. You can only have 1 unit of 20 and 1 of 10. The Curse of the Walking Dead is still the same, but they do have an ability called the Unending Horde, where each time a model in this unit would lose a wound, you roll a d6, and on a 6, that wound is not lost, so it's a little bit like a disgustingly resilient. Moving on to the Noxious Blightbringer. He is now cheaper. I don't know where he is on here, but you can't take, if you notice, there's no Plague Bearers or Nurglings. I think that's really, really sad. That they've just removed them from the Death Guard Codex now. For me, Death Guard are Nurgle and Nurgle are Death Guard, and I just would have always liked to see more incorporation with them. It's the main reason why I purchased Plague Bearers and Nurglings in the first place, is because they were in the Death Guard Codex, and now they've just taken them out of the new Codex. So yeah, that's just, you know, models that GW aren't going to sell as many of. Which is a real shame, because they are fantastic models. Now, we look at the Noxious Blightbringer, and he is cheaper, and he's also got 4 attacks. He's got a Sickening Vitality rule, so it's any models within 6 inches, you add 1 inch to the move. The Toxin is 6 inches, subtract 1 from combat attrition, and Emphiric Psyker test, you subtract 1. The Blightspawn, if we go over here, is the same power points cost. There's also got an ability called Foul Infusion now. The Blightspawn has 4 attacks, but the Plague Spewer is a strength of the 7 rather than a 2d6. That's much better in my opinion, but the damage is worse. It's only damage 2 now instead of damage 3. And the Putrefying Stink ability works a little bit differently. Now the Biologist, which is on the next page, but it's on the top there. Same power points cost. He now gets 4 attacks instead of the 3, and has the Injector Pistol now with more added mortal wounds. Any attack that wounds successfully, you've got D3 mortal wounds coming your way for the Biologist Putrefy. Praise Nurgle that Injector Pistol was increased. He's also got the Blight Rax aura as well. It means that the armor characteristic of the Blight grenades are -1, and the damage characteristic will be 2. It just bumps up the grenades. The Tallyman, which is actually over on the other page, same points cost, but again now has 4 attacks. Has this Malicious Calculation, where you add 1 to the attack's hit roll. Basically rolls differently to the Festering Zealot rule. The Plague Surgeon, which we have to go back in time to see, is the same points cost. But now he gets 4 attacks, and the Bale Sword now is a strength +1. The Narthessium works differently, it can now heal units, which you couldn't do before. The Blightlord Terminators, right here, I have to move over the page a little bit, over there as well, they are a fair bit cheaper. They're only power points cost of a 10 now instead of 14. You can still take 10 of them, but they have been bumped up. They used to only have 2 wounds, they now have 3 wounds, and they now have 3 attacks each instead of just the 2. The Plague Spear range has been increased to 12 inches, up from 9 inches. The Reaper Autocannon is now an AP -2. The Flail of Corruption got worse. The Blight Launcher now has a damage of 2. The Bale Sword is +1 strength. The Combi Weapons, there are no rules for. And the Aura of Rust has completely disappeared, so yeah, they took a big hit there with that Aura of Rust. I guess now you've got some other rules as well, such as Remorseless, Malicious Volleys, Disgustingly Resilient, Contagions of Nurgle, and Teleport Strike. And they've also got 4+ Invulnerable, so 2+ normal, 4+ Invulnerable, reducing that damage from incoming weapons. The Death Shroud Terminators were on the previous page for some reason. They have become cheaper. They're now power points cost of a 7, and they used to be 11. They've gotten better as well. They've had 3 wounds, and they've now got 4 attacks each. The Plague Spurt range has increased to 12 inches. The Man Reaper now has a damage of 2 instead of D3, which is, I would say, equal in terms of probability. Much like Typhus, you've got a new Scythe attack, you've got Chimes of Contagion, and you've now got this Bodyguard ability, whereby any unit has a wounds characteristic of 9 or less within 3 inches. Enemy units cannot target that character. So it works a little bit different than they did before. Before, they had Eyes of Mortarion, where Death Guard characters within 3 inches of Death Shroud added 1 to their attacks. And also they had Silent Bodyguard, whereby Death Guard characters hit by a range of melee weapon within 3 inches. On a 2+, the Death Shroud Terminator intercepts a hit. and the character is not hit by the attack, but this unit is instead. I think that was better. I'd much rather have that, and it's a real shame that they took it out completely. Hellbrute, which I think is on the next page of the book, and it's right here as well. As you can see, lots more text there for this Hellbrute. It remains the same power points cost, but it now gets 5 attacks. Its movement speed has dropped to 6 inches from 8 inches. The abilities have changed as well. Possessed, over here and down there, they're still the same power points cost, but they've become better. Their toughness is 5 and they have 4 attacks each, and their horrifying mutations are now plague weapons, although they did lose writhing tentacles. All the writhing tentacles where you roll a d3 and then that's how many attacks you got. So if you had 5 possessed, you rolled a d3, and if you got 1, then hey, you're only getting 5 attacks with those 5 models. Whereas now, at least you're getting 4 attacks each. So you're getting a minimum of 20 attacks there straight away, instead of a possible only 5. The Chaos Spawn has become cheaper. It's over here, but we've lost the funny, bouncy, jumpy Beast of Nurgle, a new model for Nurgle that they released last time around, but they've totally lost that Beast of Nurgle. But the Chaos Spawn has become cheaper, and you'll find it over there. It's now power points cost of a 1, and has attacks 2d3, which is amazing. Before it only had attacks d6, but now you've got attacks 2d3, which is better. And also has a new ability called Fearsome Aura, which is within 6 inches. And the pseudopods do perform a lot better. They're now 3d3 instead of 2. You thought that possibly having 6 attacks was good. Well, you can add another d3 into that and have possibly 9 attacks there with their mutated beyond reason rule. My Phytic Blight Hauler. One of my favourites, if not my favourite unit in the entire Death Guard army. Same power points cost, it still remains fast attack. It's had a buff. There's even more of a reason to have 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 of them. The ballistic skill and weapon skill are now 3+ instead of 4+. They have 2 more wounds at 9, and they have 4 attacks. Very strong unit considering it's the same price. The multi-melter is, of course, you're getting this buff for the new multi-melter rule. It's now heavy 2 and the damage of d6 +2 if it's within half range, which is 12 inches. Unfortunately though, it did lose a couple of abilities. The Tritract was removed, the Trilobe was removed, and the Putrescent Fog was removed. Maybe Games Workshop just thought it was too much, but personally I would have rather them up the price points cost a little bit and kept those other abilities in, because it would encourage people to run them in their groups of 3 for a unit. It is even an option, and I always like it when there's an ability within the unit that promotes them taking up most of the unit size. Now the Fetid Bloat Drone. Again, another success story on the whole. It's cheaper at power points cost of a 7 instead of 8. Its weapon skill is also 3+, and ballistic skill is 3+, but it's lost a wound and it has 9 wounds instead of 10. But overall, I'd rather take that. Also, it has 4 attacks now instead of 3. But the biggest winner in all this is the fact that it's a demon engine, that it's still a vehicle and it still flies and it's a demon engine, but the number of wounds that it takes, but its movement, strength and attacks are no longer affected by the number of wounds it suffers, which is, that means it can fly about running on 5 wounds, 2 wounds, and still travel at full 10 inches, still have that nice strength 6 with 4 attacks. It makes it much more viable, dangerous unit, and I'd really look out for it on the battlefield. Its weapons have become better too. So the Heavy Blight Launcher is now an AP -3 and a damage of 2. The Plague Spitter is a 12-inch and it's a strength 6 now instead of the User, which of course, as I've just said, would have been affected by the number of wounds it suffered. However, we have got a bit of a loser here. The Flesh Mower is worse. It's +1 strength of the User instead of +2, and instead of making 6 additional attacks, you're only making 3. So yeah, the Flesh Mower is worse despite the other buffs. The Probe is only damage 1 instead of D3 now as well. The Plague Burst Crawler. We have to move forward a little bit here because unfortunately we're missing out on the Plague Drones. No longer can you take those plague bearers flying about on the drones, which is a bit of a shame. We'll talk about the Land Raider in a moment. But yes, Plague Burst Crawler, it is a bit more expensive, but you get your money's worth. The ballistic skill has been improved to 3+. It's now got 4 attacks. The entropy cannon is a damage of D3 plus 3 and is a plague weapon now. The mortar is better, mainly because it doesn't have a minimum range anymore. The plague spitters are a strength of 6" and they have a improved range of 12". They have a damage of 2. They're a blast and they're a plague weapon as well. The plague spitters are a strength 6 now, and they are 12" and they are a plague weapon. And the plague burst crawler is a damage of 2 instead of the D3, and again is a blast, it's a plague weapon, and it can still fire at units not visible to the bearer. The Rothail volley gun has been changed to rapid fire 3 instead of heavy 3, and it is an AP -1 instead of AP -2. That sucks a little bit. The Land Raider, which is up there on the old codex, but down here on the new one, it's cheaper. It used to be power points cost of 19, it's now 15. Unfortunately, the demonic machine spirit has been removed from it, and that gave you a -1 to hit modifier for moving and shooting heavy weapons for the model. You no longer get that, where you used to be able to ignore the -1 to hit modifier for moving and shooting heavy weapons for the model. Predators. This is a big change here now. In the old codex, you could get a Chaos Predator for 9 power points. Now you can get it for 8. And Mortarion, as luck may have it, has also found a nice cache of Chaos Predator Annihilators. So yeah, if twin las cannons are your thing and you want some anti-armor, then yeah, you can go for it with the new Predators. The Defiler, that's a little bit cheaper. It's a power points cost of a 10 instead of an 11. Its weapon skill has been improved to a 3+, so is its ballistic skill at 3+. It's now got 5 attacks. The Defiler cannon is now a damage of 3, and it's been given the blast rule. The Defiler Scourge used to be a damage of 3, but now it's only a damage of 2. And it no longer has any smoke launchers, although it does have the keyword smoke screen. The Rhino has been changed right there. It no longer has self-repair, which sucks. And finally, last but not least, we look at Mortarion. Now, I might as well just talk about the Miasmic Malignifier while we're here. We have this new unit. It's quite cheap at a power points cost of a 4. Unfortunately, it is one of these fortifications that can be destroyed, although it does have toughness 8 and 12 wounds. I'll be talking more about this in my review, so please do go and check that out later in the week. But it has a number of abilities that really do buff your units. I wouldn't necessarily bank on it to take out Titans or anything like that, but for power points because of 4, it's definitely worth picking up. Anyway, back to Mortarion. Oh my Nurgle. Seriously, although he's gone up by 1 power point, it's now 25 power points, and the Lantern is at the same range as a Scout bolt pistol. I mean, well, that's to be expected. Scouts are elite, so it's pretty much a flashlight in a way with that silly range. You've got heavy bolt pistols that are further range than this kind of master crafted weapon that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. I was really disappointed that they changed the range from the 18 inches to 12 inches, because the main ability there is causing damage to units that are between it and its target. So any units that it touches, it causes damage to. And you really want a nice range with that ability. But now it's only the 12 inches. I think that's 12 inches. You get what I mean. So it's been reduced in range, and yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with that. I think it should have stayed at the 18 inches, especially as it's gone up in price. But anyway, moving back to his rules then. So he has had an increase in toughness. He's now a toughness 8 instead of 7, and that does make a huge difference, and I'll tell you why shortly. And he's now got 7 attacks instead of the 6. His abilities and how well he performs is still affected by the wounds that he's suffered. As I say, the Lantern is worse, but the eviscerating blow has been made better because it's now a damage of D3 instead of it used to be being D6. So you're guaranteed a 3 damage with that weapon. Most likely you're going to get a damage of 5. Bombs are now blast. The 7-inch aura abilities are now 6 inches. The Toxic's Presence, the Host of Plagues, they all work differently. All of his abilities work differently. But the key thing to remember with him is he's very, very unkillable. If you're going against someone with Mortarion, albeit he's sort of 400 points or so, or 25 power points, is a big chunk of your opponent's force, and yes, there is that juicy temptation to wipe him out or at least try and one-shot him. It's not going to happen. He's just too unkillable. If someone's got him and he dies, then they've done something incredibly wrong. There's so many layers upon layers of survivability for him. So firstly, moving back to the toughness, he's got a toughness of 8. Now, okay, you might say, well, that's only 1 toughness more than he had before, but then let's factor in how Disgustingly Resilient now works, whereby it reduces ranged weapons down by 1. So already that las cannon that's a strength 9 drops to 8. Now before, it was a 2+ to wound because it was a strength 9 against a toughness 7. It's now only wounding on a 4+. It's now only got a 50-50 chance to wound, which is, well, it's mental. Even strength 10 weapons reduced to 9 damage, they're still only going to be wounding him on a 3+. Let's go one step further though. He's a psyker, so he can pick his psychic abilities, and if we just pop over to the psychic abilities right here, the Contagion Discipline, you give him Miasma of Pestilence. Anything within 18 inches of him, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. So if you've got some high strength weaponry that's attacking within 18 inches, again, that's going to reduce 1 from the hit roll. His Warlord traits on top of this, he has Revoltingly Resilient, Living Plague and Arch Contaminator. The one you really want to be looking at here is Revoltingly Resilient. So that gives him a 5+ Feel No Pain. So every time he would lose a wound, on a 5+, the wound is not lost. You've then got his Host of Plagues ability, where you can select one of the Warlord traits, which are mainly kind of close combat traits. But you've got everything from improving the armor penetration of your friendly units, giving them invulnerable 4+ saves, to not receiving the benefit of cover. The buff in his toughness, his normal 3+ save and a 4+ invulnerable, the number of wounds that he has, the fact that he can reduce the incoming damage by 1 with Disgustingly Resilient, and then on top of that he can have a 5+ Feel No Pain, it's crazy. It makes him very, very unkillable, and there's plenty of Map Hammer out there to illustrate that in a much more fun way than I've just kind of described. But pretty much, if you see him on the battlefield, well, just hope that he doesn't come close to your army and decimate it in close combat, because there's not much at all that can go toe to toe with him and take him out quickly, put it that way, especially not from range. So yes, if you see him on the battlefield, just try and take the rest of your opponent's army out before Mortarion does. And that's pretty much all I've got to say about the new Death Guard Codex and the changes in the data sheets. I hope this video has been fun and useful for you. Looking at the timer now, I've been talking for about 50 minutes and it's most likely going to take me double that time to edit the video. So once again, if you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to support the channel any way you can, please do continue using the Element Games affiliate link, leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more daily content. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. Papa bless.